Good morning once again, everybody. So, this is not going to be a motivational speech per se. God knows I'm not Tony Robbins. But this is going to be me kicking around the ball again of essentially this, all right? And it's the only reason to still try. I'm not going to split this on generational lines, not going to say one generation is lazier than another. That's not how this is going to go. This is going to focus on base reality for just about everybody. There's a lot of people they fell for the instant gratification. Everything's got to be now, 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 and they can't wait. And more importantly, on top of the fact that they can't wait, they also don't really want to put the work in. Now, this is not a generational thing because every generation is doing it, not one or the other. All right, this is literally every generation. They want everything now. They have no patience at all, and they just expect everything to happen at the drop of a hat. All right, throw more money at the problem. Sometimes money is very effective at solving problems, but some things can only be corrected through a long chain of behavioral adjustment. Okay. For the people who, now, I do have to make the note again that the people who are running the system, all right, in particular the type that want you to eat bugs and not own anything, these people absolutely are not your friends, and no matter how you try to bend or weasel, at least in their attempt, no matter how much they try to bend and weasel their way out of the horrible shit that they've done and the horrible shit that they would like to do, on top of the horrible shit that they continue to do, it's not going to save them from the fact that, in my own personal opinion, um, they're all shit. Every single one of those people. Everyone who does talks. Like one of the more recent ones is you will pay to breathe oxygen. They will charge you for oxygen. That's nice. That's nice. Yeah. Legit evil villain shit. All right. That's what I'm not going to do it on generational lines, but that's what free market capitalism has produced. A bunch of people who think that they are so above everybody else that they get to fucking set the terms for how everybody's going to live their lives. Why is it important to cover them? Because you cannot afford to let yourself fall into a position where you own nothing. You can't let that happen. All right, this is across the generations. You have to have ownership in this society. All right, now if they've made it absolutely impossible for you, at that point, it's time to fight society. As plainly as I could put it, I'm not saying which way or how people should do that fighting, but if you are completely priced out of the system and there's absolutely no way to make it happen, then in that case, it's clobbering time. But we do not support violence here on the Space Consulting LLC channel. Anyway, everything is my personal opinion. Anyway, if you can get ownership, though, you put as much effort and energy into the land as you possibly can, even if it's small. Even if it's small, you put as much energy as you can. Now, given we have to cover, of course, the topic that, renters don't give nearly as much of a shit as people who own property do. All right. If you're just renting it, you don't care if it gets scratched up, dinged up. You don't care what fucking happens. All right. You don't care if water's infiltrating and you start getting mold or anything like that. You just care that the AC works. All right. And if it doesn't, you call the landlord. It is what it is. But, but, once you get any amount of ownership, you have to develop it. All right. Now, of course, you don't put cigar bars or anything else on it. I mean, you can if it's big enough and you have some zoning permits to make that happen because, God forbid, anybody have the freedom to do whatever they want, but not necessarily like that. Especially considering the fact that what was it? I think the Atlantic came out and was talking about the great protein shortage. They're talking about whey protein, but still, the great protein shortage is coming for all Americans. And it's just like, that's the protein shortage that you're talking about? Really? Really? Not the fact that we've managed to destroy our. You can argue with me if you want. We are, at the very least, heavily eroding the ability of American agriculture to be able to grow more and more. And on top of the fact that we do that, the herd size is the smallest it's ever been for U.S. cattle. Give me just 1 second. And we're back. So, smallest herd size since, I believe, 1962. It might have even gone lower just because upkeep costs are going up. Everything is going up. It's getting harder and harder to do anything. All right. Honestly, agriculture is one of the things that the U.S. still did well. All right. But now we have to open the floodgates for foreign competition. And as part of having a certain South American country very much on our side and in our pocket, we have to accept their beef exports. So, anyway, on the national level, accepting a form of trade bribery, essentially, to screw over your own domestic producers. Things aren't going great. Anyway, back to the point. Every ounce of suffering that you put in every tree you plant. Now, of course, you don't have to, I'm not saying plant trees on everything, every square centimeter, but, but if you plant a bunch of apple trees on a bit of property that you own, may not produce for a while, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I don't know what the actual maturation rate is. Let me check that real quick. For apple trees. Oh, that's not bad. 2 to 8 years. Depends on how it was propagated and the size. Hmm. And, that's honestly a bit odd. Grafted saplings sold in nurseries produce fruit much faster than trees grown from seeds. Interesting. 2 to 5 years instead. 2 to 8. Dwarf varieties begin producing within 2 to 3. Okay, well, anyway. 20 years would have been a long fucking time. Anyway, now that we got that cleared up, you start planting trees, all right? Especially apple trees. Apple trees in particular, because it's, an offshoot of the oak family. Oak trees are damn near well, I can't say damn near unkillable, but they are incredibly tough. The wood's tough, and those things will hold on to the absolute last thread. All right. Apple trees are the same way. I've seen apple trees where literally 3/4, maybe even more, of the trunk had just decayed and was rotten, and it's still holding up. The little bit that's left is still holding up this entire canopy, and it's just like, my God, that is incredible. Oak wood is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. But you get something like apple trees. Of course, if you're living down south or in the west, you might do different varieties of things. But you do trees, and they bear fruit, and you take that fruit. You, in the case of apples, you dip it in the wax or whatever, you deal with it, and boom, you've got money right there. All right. Not only that, but assuming you don't want to sell them, you always have the opportunity to stockpile them, at least to a certain extent. The wax can keep them going for quite a long time, but you don't necessarily want them hanging around consistently, unless you have the capabilities to hold on to like a 5 year or 10 year supply of fucking apples. I mean, more power to anybody who wants to try it. But if the entire world goes to shit, those apple trees, they're still going to be producing apples. Unless they get burnt up by nuclear fire, of course, but still, they're going to still be producing apples. Okay? You have a food supply right there. The more berry bushes that you plant, the more grapevines that you seed, the more that you develop, all right? Of course, if you grow things out from the vine, obviously, you're going to need to start building trellises, things for it to climb up. Regardless, every ounce of effort that you put in, assuming that you keep up with it, and it is going to be a little bit of a job in its own, but as long as you keep up with it for the most part, you're improving property value, you're setting yourself up to live an easier life, possibly giving yourself another passive income, essentially. There's very little downside, if any, outside of the, strain on your back. Okay? Everything that you can do to increase your standard of living yourself is something you have to look into. All right? If you're stuck in the cities, the best thing that you can look towards is machinery. Not necessarily saying you have to get machines and fill up an apartment with CNCs. No, no. But taking available parts and creating new things. All right, new inventions, new whatever. Make something cool, and then make it good, and then make it sellable. All right. You do everything to protect your IP while the system is still functioning somewhat, and you go and you start selling whatever product or service. You could do services as well. But every little thing that you do, every little bit that you suffer, toiling under the sun, doing whatever, just grinding through the night, trying to fucking make new machines and make interesting things work. Okay? And it doesn't have to, of course, it doesn't have to be cogs and levers. It could just be electrical, doing soldering. That's even easier to do in an urban setting. All right, soldering iron, breadboard, jumper wires. You can get yourself a starter set of shit to play with for relatively cheap. Learn how to do DC electrics. Eventually get up to AC electrics. Find a way to make a better motor. Okay. The more you suffer. All right. This also goes towards physicality as well. All right. Up to an extent, of course. The more hard work you do when you're younger, all right, the more muscle development you get, the more bones that you break, all right, the more that might not go out and break all your bones. No. Um for every bone that you break, it comes back stronger. All right. May not be exactly perfect, but it comes back stronger. Okay? Every time your muscle fibers tear from hard workouts, all right, or hard labor, all right, they come back stronger. You know, if you go from an office job to a physical job, it's going to hurt like hell for a couple weeks, maybe. Depends on how much of an office job your office job was. All right. But you develop. All right. Now, obviously, that part of it is a little bit masochistic. All right. You have to be willing to put yourself in the position where you're doing work harder, not smarter. Okay. But it pays its dividends. All right. When you have to lift the heavy thing. All right. When you go from the warehouse job to, or not a warehouse job, an office job to a warehouse job, and your entire life becomes I pick things up and put them down. All right. Makes life a lot easier the more shit you've gone through. Now, obviously, there is a peak point you want to get to. All right. Now, it's different for everybody. But once you get to once you get to that peak, further development is questionable. The human body can only take so much. This is part of the reason why tradespeople all, and this is the thing, women in particular are very good at spotting tradespeople, but as they get older, it becomes even easier to spot them. Okay, why? And not just tradespeople, but also military, um, because their bodies have gone through massive amounts of abuse. You can tell a plumber just by watching, well, it's not just plumbers, but based on knee damage. Okay. You could tell a carpenter based on how many fingers he has left. All right. If he's a good carpenter, he has all his legs. What does he have? 20 legs? If he's a good carpenter, he has all his fingers, but his back's going to be fucked up. His knees might be fucked up. All of the tradespeople, once they get to their late 30s, early 40s, they all start developing that limp for the most part. They start developing a limp. The damage adds up over time. All right. Once you get to a certain point, you do have to, as you get older, you have to naturally slow down. But the more you develop yourself early, all right, the longer your physical arc goes. Okay. So the thing, if you go from 100% and it's a slow grind down, all right, if you only developed your body up to, say, 30, 40%, the decline is much steeper. Okay. There's the thing. The more you suffer early on and the more hard work you do early on, the longer it takes to completely render you useless. All right. That's the thing. All right. If you had it real easy, all right, if you had it real easy in life, what ends up happening is you get older, your body wasn't developed anywhere where it should have been, and you end up, and this is not medical advice, by the way, I gotta throw that in there, and your decline is much sharper and much faster. All right. But you work on yourself, you get a piece of property, you work that property to death. All right. And especially this, for all of you people out there, especially those of you in the cities, learn how to do everything yourself. Okay. Find, do everything possible to put yourself in a position where if your car breaks down, you can fix it yourself. If you want to build a new addition, you learn how to do it yourself. Okay. If you want to do X, if you want to do Y, all right, learn to do it yourself. Every single step. All right. Every single step. You're the guy who pours the concrete. You're the guy who drafts what the next edition is going to be. You learn how to build the bridges. You learn how to do it all on your own. All right. How to fix everything you own. Is it going to be a pain in the ass? Absolutely. Absolutely. Are you going to deal with a learning curve constantly? Yes. All right. Every single interaction you have past that, you will just randomly bump into people and pick up information that helps you with other things later on. All right. So eventually, if you're doing some kind of work, maybe you're doing stone work or something, it could be anything. All right. Eventually, you'll bump into a stonemason and they'll give you a tip that'll stay with you for the rest of your life. Okay. Random things. But the more you know how to do, the less likely you're going to get taken advantage of, especially with fucking mechanics, because a lot of people, give me just a moment. My apologies. Seems a very sizable spider has gotten into the office. Anyway, for now, let's continue. Where was I? Picking up little things as you go and not being taken advantage of. So, a lot of people have been, of course, complaining about mechanics taking them to the cleaners. And honestly, I totally understand you there. I do. I do. If I didn't know as much as I know, and if I wasn't so dedicated to keeping old machines going, okay, I'd be at their mercy too. Okay, this is part of the thing. If you want nice toys, this in particular, if you want nice toys, the learning curve is going to be steeper. Okay, it's just the way it's going to be. It's going to be a steeper learning curve. It's going to be more difficult. But but if you are more than happy to keep the old shit boxes going, for instance, you learn every single fucking part as you have to replace it. And then all of a sudden you become a relative genius dealing with older cars. Okay? Then you don't have to go to the mechanics constantly and see that they're charging. And last I heard, the way it used to be, in a lot of areas, it was like 40 to 60 an hour, and then with all of the inflation and the cost of parts and reliability collapsing, mechanics started charging 80 to 100 an hour. And for the most part, mechanic rates go from anywhere between 80 to 140, 160 now. Okay? That's fucking expensive. All right, especially for people who haven't seen pay increases for a couple years now. All right, it's become more and more difficult for people to keep up with that. But the word has definitely gotten out, and people are starting to turn back to the old rust buckets. All right, they don't necessarily have to be rust buckets, but you know what I mean. All right, old cars that work. All right. Given you're going to have to put a decent amount of sweat equity. I know a lot of people hate hearing that term, and that's reasonable because if you've ever been burnt by a startup, you definitely know what sweat equity means. All right. You work your ass off, and the company still fails, and you get nothing. All right. You just did the work of, well, most people do the work of 3 people on their own. You do the work of 6 people on your own, and you get nothing for it. In this case, you put sweat equity into a car, something that you own. All right, because especially the old cars, given prices are starting to move up on them considerably as more and more people try to ditch the modern cars, and they're getting harder to find. A lot of them. Um, you get the old cars, you put in the sweat equity, you own it, you improve it. Every improvement you make and makes it better. And it's the thing. Eventually, with the old cars, because most of them were body on frame, or at least a decent chunk were body on frame. Um, some of them started the switch over earlier, but regardless, most of them were body on frame, especially up north where you get rough winters, you get the salt. You end up learning how to repair a frame. You end up naturally drifting into welding. You end up naturally drifting into dealing with the electrical work on it because not everything's going to be mechanical. Every single thing, every single challenge that comes your way, don't back down from that shit. You can do it. This is the thing. The only real reason to back down from a challenge is if it would be too much of a financial strain or a ball ache over time. Okay. So, for instance, let's say, oh God, let's say you lived in an apartment complex. You only had access to one parking spot, and your car fails. Okay. Now, if it's a newer car, obviously you can trade down into something older. It's going to take time to look for it, but you can trade down to something easier to deal with, or you could try to repair that. Now, given this is somewhat contradictory, but truthfully, the investment costs, like for newer cars, a lot of the software is increasingly becoming dealer only. All right, dealer only features, dealer only this, yeah, I can't even say it. Dealer only this, dealer only that, where even decent price scan tools can't keep up with it. All right, or you're paying extortionary rates in order to get access to what the fuck you paid for. Okay, honestly, that's not a hill worth dying on. All right, just because financially it's going to be too straining. Now, if you only have one parking spot and, let's say you get a second car, okay, obviously that's going to be a problem. So, if the first one's a ball ache, but the second one's going to be easier for you to deal with and maintain, you keep the second one, ditch the first one, okay? There So much of this is about positioning too and letting go of the ego and the bullshit. Okay. As for instance, a lot of guys still, because, the whole is very important to guys. A lot of guys are still fucking caught up in the idea that having a nice car will get them laid, and they will literally put themselves in a gigantic financial hole to for the possibility, for the potential whiff of coochie. That ain't worth it. That ain't worth it. The reality is, if you're a dude and you're driving a quote unquote shit box, keep the fucking shit box. Keep it. All right. If a chick wants nothing to do with you because you don't have the nice, fast new car, because you don't have a fucking Hellcat, okay? You don't need that chick in your life. And more importantly, if that chick ends up in your life, she gonna take your Hellcat. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Married or not, she gonna take your fucking Hellcat. All right, and depending on how things go, she's either gonna be nice to it or terrible to it. Um, it is a thing. Those who piss off and scorn women generally find out relatively quickly. Um, especially those kind of women. Eh, you know how they are. You care more about that car than you do me. And then you go outside and you find your tires flat for some reason. Or your windshield's busted in, things like that. Regardless, hopefully I'm keeping enough to the point here. You get what I'm saying. But outside of, not putting yourself in a financial shitstorm for the potential whiff of coochie, um, if you get something, it's the same thing. It applies to self development with the red pill community. You develop yourself, and girls come naturally. All right, you don't have to put in massive amounts of work trying to get. There's so many words I cannot say on YouTube. You don't have to put in, all this work and dig yourself into a financial hole to find females. Okay? Just develop yourself and set everything up so it's an easier development arc, ideally. All right? Old cars that run. If a chick's interested, she's not going to give a fuck, like, legitimately interested in the right way. She's not going to give a fuck what you're driving. All right? Mm. God, I'm drifting off course here. Anyway, suffering begets greatness to a point. Once you get to a certain point, once you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s. Yeah. Um, Breaking your back, it's not really feasible anymore because you don't bounce back as easily and as well. Okay. But, but, you put in the work everywhere that you can. Everywhere where you directly, as an owner in the process, will benefit. You put in the work, you reap the rewards. All right. Do not get wrapped up in this game of renting resources. All right. You don't want to rent anything, you want to own it. Also, because this rule is fairly important, if purchase isn't ownership, then piracy isn't theft. I have to include that because it is tied to the idea of, you will own nothing and be happy. If you pay for something and you don't own it, should the event come that they try to yoink licenses to access content or software or any of that, should they try, these large organizations try to yoink your ownership, then at that point, it's fair game. All right? We sail the seven seas, lads. Oh my god, he's promoting piracy. No, I'm just being real. I'm just being real. That's what we do here. Well, I tend to be fairly decent at it. That's the thing. We're the right kind of assholes. We're not we're not bullshitters in the way that the high money, yeah, higher society types will bullshit you. We don't. We don't. We give you the fucking truth, whether you like it or not. Anyway, I think I'll end it here because I'm starting to drift down other potential rabbit holes, and this will be way too long of a video if I do that. So, if you are interested in personal or business consulting, stop by www.spadesconsulting.com. If you are interested in some of the old written work, check out the Substack linked below. And if you like and appreciate the video, like, favorite, sub, share, do all of the things, ring the bell, ding the bell, tickle the bell, do all the things to your heart's content to the bell. Leave a comment. I do read them. And hype it if it comes up. And I will see you all next time. Have a good one.